Alright, this is going to be a brief technical overview of the terrain mode for the level editor for Bark and Butter. I'm the person who made it, Murder. So the first thing I want to tell you about is how to move around. If you press the right mouse button and try to move, you'll be able to move with the WASD keys, and Q and E will move you up relative to the camera. And of course you can look around. I used to also have some zoom buttons. I removed those because they interfered with some TerraBrush stuff. You can also middle click to get a focus somewhere on the terrain. Sometimes that's more helpful than others. Alright, so first of all, hey, this drawer also needs to be changed, Penguin Milk. These drawers are supposed to hide the UI when you don't want to see it. In this case, he didn't change it when he moved it from the left to the right of the screen, so that's a little funny. So let's go over the TerraBrush options. I basically didn't change what's in the stock TerraBrush, so if you find SpeedMort's tutorials for TerraBrush, those will also apply here. So you have the 6 terrain options, which are to raise and lower the terrain, smooth and flatten the terrain, set the terrain height to a given level, and set the terrain angle. I'm going to highlight this one because it's very useful to make. Say I want a ski run that goes down at 26 degrees. That's now what I have here. It is perfectly flattened it so that from that point down to here, it's moving up to 24 degrees. That was a huge brush. I start the brush size pretty large. You can move it down up to 200 or down to 20. You can move it over here. You can also hold G, which is the key I highlight here, and that'll also do it. And the brush strength can also be pushed up or pushed down. That can go from 1% to 100%. Technically 0, but that doesn't get rid of it. If you auto add zones, by the way, that will be, I need to actually do something. That will create the new zones out here, so you can make as big a land as you want, and you can just turn off auto add zones when you don't. When we get to inspector mode, I will teach you how to change the textures for TerraBrush, and I will show you how to delete zones for TerraBrush. So next on the docket are colors and textures. Once you have a texture or something, you might want to change your brush. I'm hoping that Penguin Milk adds a few more brushes to the TerraBrush PNG files, and so you'll have a little more options here to play with. And also here is how you choose which texture to paint. So the first was holding B to select the terrain brush, and the second was holding N to select the terrain texture. And when I do that, I have the groomed texture and the powdered texture in here to start. At current, there is no way to paint directional texturing in TerraBrush. SpeedMort is working on that. It'll come along in some upcoming feature. But that does mean that you don't get to choose which direction the groomed snow is going to be groomed in, which is unfortunate for a skiing game for now, but we won't be stuck with that forever. Then we have foliage. I don't have any foliages defined by default, but these would be multi-meshes. If you don't develop in Godot, you probably don't know what those are, but that means that they don't have collision and they're very cheap to render. So this is great for foliage, it's great for grass, it's great for bushes, as long as they shouldn't have collision. As soon as you want to have collision, like these trees, then you want to define them in the objects instead. And these trees are all defined here in TerraBrush, so I can literally paint them all away. Now that I'm talking about objects, there is something you will notice when you start to use the level editor, and this is something that I need to find a workaround for. When you right-click, it sets the TerraBrush tool to the default. So right now I'm removing pines. I right-click to move around. I'm no longer removing pines. In fact, what I'm removing, if I go to add objects, is these rocks, which I also put into the TerraBrush object array. I'm kind of regretting it. There's no point to have rocks like these around. So, as soon as I press the right click, it moved to that instead of to the trees, and the right click is how you move around. So it's something I need to find a workaround for. Water. I don't have any of the water defined in TerraBrush, so for now it'll just be kind of ugly and kind of useless. But you can define the water yourself over in the TerraBrush options. I'll show you that when it comes to inspector mode. And likewise, you can add some water flow there if you define it. The snow, I also don't have this defined, so right now it's just kind of a formless mess. But this snow is actually snow you can sink into. So most of the snow here is just defined as part of the terrain. It's the ground, effectively. This snow, however, you can move through. It's like a big bank of powdered snow. And you will even clear a path through it if you ski through it. You just might want to actually define it so that it's not just a formless white mess. Okay, let's remove this snow. Next thing here is adding a hole. If you are making, say, a tunnel for your map, or you want to make some kind of overhang in the terrain can't normally do that because it's a height map. It only can have one height pixel, one height value for each coordinate, XY coordinate. However, you can make a tunnel model or, an overhang model or something like that, and then cut a hole in the terrain. This will cut a hole not only for collision, not only visually, but also for collision. So now I can make a tunnel that has, this kind of hole around it, and make some rocks at the edge of the tunnel so it bleeds into the terrain here, and then just plop it right in. And if I was making a tunnel, I would also make a matching hole somewhere over here, and I'd end up traveling between the two through my tunnel model that has collision. I'll show you how to give any mesh its own collision when we get to the inspector mode, but that's going to be another video. You can also lock terrain. It doesn't really show it, but now that I've locked a bunch of terrain, if I try to raise it, let's actually put my brush up to max. That actually did not work. I guess I wasn't actually locking it. So now if I try to lock it, here we go. You'll see that there's a huge part of this terrain where just nothing's happening as I try to raise it. That's the part where I have locked the terrain. So that can be useful if you have something already the way you want, and you want to make sure that none of your other brush strokes are affecting it. I think actually I did lock a fair bit here. It just wasn't totally obvious because of the hole there is blocking some of where it would normally be unaffected. But you can see there's kind of this lip forming around the locked area. All right. So that is the brief technical overview of the terrain mode. That I'm not reviewing how best to do things, just here's what they are.